The person you think you are might be a lie. Right now, at this very moment, there's a part of your personality operating in the shadows. A part you don't see, a part you don't acknowledge, a part that influences your decisions, sabotages your relationships, and quietly controls more of your life than you'd like to admit. Carl Jung called this your shadow self, but it's more specific than that. Within your shadow lies a toxic archetype, a pattern of behavior so deeply embedded in your subconscious that you mistake it for who you actually are. Until you identify which toxic archetype is running your life, you'll keep wondering why you repeat the same patterns, attract the same problems, and feel stuck in the same cycles. This video isn't about feeling good. It's not about positive affirmations or surface-level self-help. This is about confronting something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. The part of yourself that you've been hiding from. The part that emerges when you're stressed, triggered, or vulnerable. The part that whispers toxic thoughts in your ear and then convinces you those thoughts are reality. By the end of this video, you're going to recognize which archetype has been quietly controlling you. You're going to see how it shows up in your daily life. And most importantly, you're going to learn how to take back control. Not by eliminating it, because you can't, but by becoming aware of it, by seeing it for what it is, by stopping it from operating in the darkness where it has the most power. Have you ever wondered why certain situations always trigger you in the same way? Why you keep ending up in similar conflicts? Why, despite your best intentions, you find yourself doing the same self-destructive things over and over again? That's not random. That's your toxic archetype. And it's time you two finally met. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe to help us grow and spread knowledge to others. Now let's dive into the hidden patterns that have been controlling you. Your bad days aren't random. They're not just unfortunate accidents or bad luck. They follow a pattern, a very specific pattern. And once you start paying attention, you'll see that pattern everywhere. Maybe it's the way you react when someone criticizes you, or how you respond when things don't go according to plan, or the thoughts that run through your head when you're alone at night. These aren't isolated incidents. They're symptoms of something deeper, something Carl Jung spent his entire career studying. Jung discovered that within each person's psyche exists what he called the shadow. This isn't some mystical concept. It's a psychological reality. Your shadow is the collection of traits, impulses, and tendencies that you've rejected, suppressed, or denied about yourself. The parts of you that don't fit the image you want to project to the world. Within that shadow, patterns emerge. Consistent ways of reacting that Jung called archetypes. These are universal patterns of behavior that show up across all cultures and throughout human history. And some of these archetypes, when they operate unconsciously, become toxic. They don't just influence your behavior, they hijack it. Dr. Robert Moore, a Jungian analyst, explains that these archetypes aren't inherently bad. They're energy patterns that can be constructive or destructive depending on whether you're aware of them. When you're conscious of an archetype, you can channel its energy productively. But when it operates in your shadow, outside your awareness, it becomes toxic. It controls you without your permission. Have you ever said something in anger and then thought, where did that come from? Or made a decision that looking back you can't quite explain? Or felt an emotion so intense that it surprised even you? That's your archetype speaking. That's the shadow self temporarily taking control. And the reason this matters so much is because most people live their entire lives being controlled by these patterns without ever realizing it. They think they're making conscious choices, They think they're responding rationally, but in reality, they're acting out unconscious scripts written by archetypes they've never identified. So understanding this isn't about shame. It's not about labeling yourself as broken or damaged. It's about power. The power to see what's been invisible. The power to choose a different response. The power to stop being controlled by patterns you didn't even know existed. Let's talk about how these toxic archetypes actually show up in your daily life. They slip in during moments of stress, vulnerability, or emotional intensity, and they masquerade as you. Think about this scenario. You're driving to work. Traffic is heavy. Someone cuts you off. And instantly rage floods your body. But it's not just anger about the traffic. It's something deeper. Your inner dialogue starts spinning. Of course this would happen to me. Nothing ever goes right. People are so selfish. Everyone's out for themselves. Nobody cares about anyone else. This isn't a rational response to a minor inconvenience. This is an archetype speaking. Specifically, it might be what Jung would call the victim archetype. And in that moment, you're not seeing reality. You're seeing reality through the filter of this archetype. The person who cut you off isn't some malicious villain. They're probably just rushing to work like you are. But your archetype transformed them into proof of your victim narrative. Or consider another common scenario. You're about to give a presentation at work. You've prepared. You know your material. But as you're about to start, a voice in your head says, "You're going to mess this up. They're all going to see you're a fraud. You don't belong here. Who do you think you are?" That's not your rational mind. That's the critic archetype. And if you're not aware of it, you'll believe those thoughts are accurate assessments of reality. You'll let them undermine your confidence. You'll let them create the very failure they're predicting. Dr. James Hollis, a Jungian analyst, explains that these archetypes reveal themselves through what he calls tells. Just like a poker player has unconscious gestures that reveal their hand, you have unconscious patterns that reveal your dominant archetype. The tells are consistent negative thought loops. The same critical voice that shows up in every challenging situation. They're predictable emotional triggers. The same things that set you off again and again. They're patterns in your relationships. The same dynamic that appears with different people. Maybe every romantic relationship you've had ends the same way. Maybe every friendship eventually hits the same conflict. Maybe every job leads to the same frustration. These aren't coincidences. These are your archetype's fingerprints. They're the signature of an unconscious pattern playing out repeatedly. And here's the really uncomfortable part. Your current blind spots, the things about yourself you absolutely cannot see, are actually the loudest signals from your archetype. The things other people might mention about you that you immediately dismiss or get defensive about, that's not them being unfair. That's your archetype trying to stay hidden. Think about the last time you felt genuinely triggered. Not just mildly annoyed, but deeply reactive. What was the situation? What thoughts went through your head? What did you want to do or say? Because in that moment of activation, your archetype was fully present. And if you can replay that moment honestly, you can start to see its pattern. Let's look at some of the most common toxic archetypes that operate in people's shadows. The first is the Saboteur. This archetype is terrified of success. Not consciously, of course. Consciously, you want to succeed. You work toward your goals. You make plans. But right as you're about to break through, something happens. You procrastinate at a crucial moment. You pick a fight with someone important. You make a careless mistake that ruins your opportunity. And you tell yourself it was bad luck or bad timing, but it wasn't. It was the Saboteur. Dr. Caroline Myss, who has written extensively about archetypes, explains that the Saboteur emerges from a deep fear of change and a subconscious belief that you don't deserve success. It operates by creating self-fulfilling prophecies. If you fail, you were right to be afraid. If you succeed, you'll be exposed as a fraud, or you'll lose what you have. So the saboteur keeps you stuck in the middle. Safe, but unfulfilled. You might recognize the saboteur if you notice patterns like this. Starting projects with enthusiasm, but never finishing them. Having opportunities presented to you, but finding reasons not to pursue them. Achieving some success, and then immediately doing something to undermine it. The saboteur's motto is better safe than sorry, but it defines safety as stagnation. The second archetype is the critic. This one is brutal. The critic's voice is the one that tells you you're not good enough, that you're not smart enough, attractive enough, talented enough, worthy enough. It picks apart everything you do. It finds the flaw in every accomplishment. It compares you to others and always finds you lacking. Dr. Kristin Neff, a researcher on self-compassion, points out that the critic often masquerades as motivation. You tell yourself that being hard on yourself will make you better, that criticism is how you improve. But research shows the opposite is true. The critic doesn't motivate growth. It paralyzes you with shame and fear. You might have the critic as your dominant archetype if you experience persistent imposter syndrome, if you dismiss compliments and focus on criticism, if you replay your mistakes obsessively, if you set impossibly high standards and then punish yourself for not meeting them. The critic's motto is, "You'll never be enough," and it will find evidence for that belief everywhere. The third archetype is the martyr. This one is particularly insidious because it disguises itself as virtue. The martyr sacrifices endlessly for others, gives without boundaries, takes care of everyone else's needs while ignoring their own, and then feels resentful, exhausted, and unappreciated. You might recognize the martyr if you often think nobody appreciates what I do for them. If you feel proud of how much you sacrifice. If you struggle to say no even when you're exhausted. If you keep score of what you've done for others and feel bitter when they don't reciprocate. The martyr's motto is, "I suffer, therefore I matter." But it's a hollow form of mattering that leaves you drained. The fourth archetype is the controller. This one needs everything to go according to plan, needs to manage every detail, needs to know what's going to happen before it happens. The controller can't delegate because nobody else will do it right. Can't relax because something might go wrong. Can't trust because trust means loss of control. Dr. Stephen Stosny, who specializes in anger and control issues, explains that the controller operates from fear. Fear of chaos, fear of vulnerability, fear of being hurt or disappointed. So it tries to control everything and everyone as a protection mechanism. But the more you try to control, the more anxious you become, because you can never control enough. You might have the controller archetype if you micromanage people, if you get disproportionately upset when plans change, if you struggle in relationships because you need your partner to behave in specific ways, if you feel responsible for outcomes that aren't actually yours to determine. The controller's motto is, "If I let go, everything will fall apart." But the irony is that holding on so tightly is what creates the falling apart. Now that you've potentially identified your archetype, the question becomes, what do you do about it? And the answer might surprise you. You don't fight it. You don't try to eliminate it. You don't wage war against yourself. What you do is bring awareness to it. You observe it. You catch it in action. Dr. Dan Siegel, a neuropsychiatrist, talks about the concept of name it to tame it. When you can identify and name an emotional state or pattern, you automatically reduce its power over you. Just the act of recognition creates distance, creates choice, creates the possibility of responding differently. So, here's the most powerful technique you can start using immediately. It's called the pause and observe. The next time you feel activated, triggered, or emotionally reactive, pause just for 5 seconds. And in that pause, observe what's happening, not from inside the emotion, but from above it. Ask yourself these questions. What am I feeling right now? What thoughts are going through my head? What does this feeling remind me of? Have I felt this exact way before? And then, here's the key question. Which archetype is speaking right now? Is it the saboteur telling you to quit before you fail? Is it the critic telling you you're not good enough? Is it the martyr feeling unappreciated? Is it the controller panicking because something's out of your hands? Just naming it creates a shift, because now it's not you feeling this way. It's your archetype, and you can observe your archetype without being controlled by it. Dr. Tara Brach, a psychologist who combines Western psychology with mindfulness, calls this sacred pause. It's the space between stimulus and response, and in that space lives your freedom, your power, your ability to choose. Another powerful tool is journaling, but not just any journaling. Specific prompts designed to reveal your archetype's patterns. At the end of each day, write down the answers to these questions. When did I feel most drained today, and why? What thought made me feel small? What situation triggered a strong emotional reaction in me? When did I feel the urge to control, criticize, sacrifice, or sabotage? Over time, you'll see patterns emerge. You'll notice that the same themes keep appearing. The same situations trigger you. The same thoughts repeat. And those patterns are your archetype signature. They're how it reveals itself. Dr. James Pennebaker's research on expressive writing shows that simply writing about emotional experiences helps people process them and reduces their psychological impact. But more than that, it creates clarity. It helps you see what you couldn't see while you were inside the experience. The third tool is identifying your archetype's origin story. Where did this pattern come from? When did you first learn to be the saboteur, the critic, the martyr, or the controller? Because these archetypes aren't random. They developed as adaptations to your early experiences. Maybe you became the saboteur because success led to more expectations you couldn't meet. Maybe you became the critic because that's how your parents motivated you. Maybe you became the martyr because that's how you got love and attention. Maybe you became the controller because your childhood felt chaotic and unsafe. Dr. Bruce Perry's work on trauma shows that our nervous system adapts to our environment, and sometimes those adaptations, while helpful at the time, become toxic patterns later in life. Understanding where your archetype came from doesn't excuse its behavior, but it helps you see it with compassion. It helps you realize this pattern was once protection. It just isn't serving you anymore. Here's where everything shifts. Once you can recognize your toxic archetype in action, you have a choice you've never had before. Because you can't choose differently if you don't know you're choosing at all. But now you do. Now you can see it happening. And that changes everything. Let's say you're the saboteur, and you notice that familiar feeling rising. That urge to procrastinate on something important. That voice saying, maybe this isn't the right time. Before, you would have just listened to that voice. You would have assumed it was your rational mind giving you good advice. But now you know it's the saboteur. And you can ask yourself a different question. Is this voice protecting me from real danger? Or is it protecting me from growth? Most of the time, it's the latter. The saboteur isn't protecting you from failure. It's protecting you from the vulnerability of trying. And once you see that, you can choose courage instead. Not because the fear isn't real, but because you understand where it's coming from, and you decide it doesn't get to make your decisions anymore. Or maybe you're the critic, and you catch yourself in that familiar loop of self-judgment. You made a mistake, and immediately your inner voice attacks. Before, you would have believed that voice was telling the truth, but now you recognize it's the critic, and you can respond to it differently. You can say, "I see you. I know you're trying to protect me from being hurt by others' criticism, by criticizing myself first. But I don't need that protection. I can handle feedback without destroying myself." Dr. Richard Schwartz developed a therapeutic model called internal family systems that treats these different parts of ourselves as distinct entities, and one of the most powerful interventions is simply acknowledging them. Thank you for trying to help. I appreciate that you're trying to protect me, but I've got this. I can handle this differently now. The same applies if you're the martyr. When you notice yourself saying yes when you mean no, when you feel that familiar resentment building, you can pause. You can recognize that's the martyr trying to earn love through sacrifice. And you can choose a different path. You can say no without guilt. You can give because you want to, not because you need something in return. You can set boundaries without feeling like a bad person. And if you're the controller, when you feel that anxiety rising because something's not going according to plan, you can recognize it. You can see that's the controller trying to protect you from uncertainty by gripping tighter, and you can choose to let go. Not because control is bad, but because trying to control everything is exhausting and ultimately impossible. You can practice trusting, surrendering, allowing, and discovering that you're safe even without control. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, a trauma researcher, says that the body keeps the score. These patterns are stored not just in your thoughts, but in your nervous system. So changing them isn't just about thinking differently. It's about doing differently. It's about taking small actions that prove to your nervous system that you're safe, even when you respond in a new way. So start small. Pick one situation where your archetype usually shows up and commit to responding differently. Just once. Just as an experiment. If you're the saboteur, follow through on one small commitment. If you're the critic, give yourself one compliment without immediately dismissing it. If you're the martyr, say no to one request. If you're the controller, let one thing unfold without your intervention. And notice what happens. Notice that you survive. Notice that the world doesn't end. Notice that you're actually okay. Maybe even better than okay, when you don't let the archetype control you. Because each small success builds evidence. It teaches your brain that there's another way, a healthier way, a way where you're in charge, not your shadow. Today, you've met your toxic archetype. You've seen how it operates in your life. You've learned tools to recognize it in action, and you've discovered that awareness creates choice. Now the question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you fall back into unconscious patterns, or will you choose awareness? Because knowing about your archetype isn't enough. You have to actively engage with it, daily, consistently, with patience and compassion. This isn't a one-time fix. It's a lifelong practice of self-awareness. But every time you catch your archetype in action and choose differently, you reclaim a piece of your power. You stop being controlled by unconscious patterns. You start becoming the conscious creator of your life. So I want you to ask yourself right now, what new intention will you set for yourself today, now that you've met your shadow? How will you show up differently in the next challenging situation? Which pattern are you finally ready to break? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if this video helped you see something about yourself you couldn't see before, give it a like and share it with someone who needs this awareness. Subscribe to this channel for more content exploring the hidden patterns that shape our lives.